There are multiple ways to go about creating something, but two themes that seem to pop up over and over again are imitation and innovation. Don't get me wrong, there are times when you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but there are also times when the wheel sucks and you know you can do better. I'm glad that Cardano is an example of the latter. Ready? Let's go. This video is probably going to be called Cardano Innovation versus Imitation. I also could have called it To Hell with Your Fee Market. That's because we're going to cover the IOHK November mid-month development update where Triple H, Harrison, Hemsley, Hammond, joined by Director of Cardano Architecture, John Woods, are going to explain to us the many ways, the many tricks up their sleeves to deal with congestion and still preserve one of the great beauties of the Cardano ecosystem, and that is fee determinism. Here we are, greeted by Tim Harrison, and we've got to address something right off the bat. On Twitter, this is crucial, and this is crucial. This is something we have to address. This is crucial. On Twitter, Tim Harrison, just jokingly, but I'm saying we got to raise the alarm right now. Just jokingly, he mentioned changing out his glasses over the holiday season. Possibly, jokingly mentioned possibly changing out his glasses over the holiday season. Here's the problem. These are powerful glasses. When Tim wears these glasses, I get to imagine him being a Kingsman and the things he would do in his spare time when he's not doing Cardano 360s and all of his duties at IOHK. I imagine him doing all the cool gadget stuff, all the secret gadget stuff, like using umbrellas that are actually guns, using watches that set off landmines, all these things. If these glasses go away and he gets normal, non-powerful glasses, that's all gone. All that's gone. So if you absolutely must get rid of these glasses, and I don't even know under what circumstances that happens, like they get run over by a lorry. I don't even know what a lorry is. But based on my viewing of Netflix European murder mysteries, I am under the impression they can run things over. If your glasses fly off your head and they get run over by a lorry, you got to get equally powerful glasses. We have to have the powerful glasses. Just a small aside. Okay, enough of my nonsense. I do like those glasses though. Nigel Hemsley talked about the Plutus application backend, the PAB. He said they're working with the Plutus partners. You know already, those are the third-party Haskell developers. They're all doing different things. There are about 75 different projects in development. One example of this is MLabs, which is building an NFT marketplace. This NFT marketplace being built by MLabs is their sort of end-to-end test case that's now fully on the test net. They said Sunday Swap is very close. Nigel, later on in the video, Nigel also said they're sort of working toward a full round trip between Wallet and dApp, I'm assuming. Next up, we got to meet John Woods, who is the director of Cardano architecture at IOHK. He says Cardano basically has three core component categories: consensus, ledger, and network. He says this amounts to the best possible start that we can now use to build out the network. He mentioned that Ouroboros Praus has a security requirement that blocks propagate. And I like his description of this as the blocks traversing the network. But the blocks must traverse the network, propagate in 5 seconds. John describes this 5 seconds as a budget we can spend to increase other parameters. Here's how they're looking at spending that budget. First up, block size increases. The mempool is currently 128 KB and blocks are currently 64 KB. Soon they'll start increasing block size and even possibly increasing the transaction size that's allowed within a block. Medium and longer term, they're looking at including Ouroboros Genesis, which will lay the groundwork to make us even more decentralized from a networking perspective. And longer term, it'll allow an order of magnitude increase in performance. That's order of magnitude increase in performance. So Tim, I was really glad he asked this question here. He had John specify that he's not talking about Hydra here. When he mentioned this order of magnitude increase in performance, he said, are you talking about Hydra or something else? John said he's not talking about Hydra. He's actually talking about layer one. So think about this for a second. We already know about the often discussed potential of Hydra. He's saying we could see an order of magnitude increase in layer one throughput from some of these optimizations. That's a big deal. John also talked about peer to peer. He said that right now we have different types of actors in the networking component of Cardano, the networking category of components of Cardano. He said we have SPOs who are producing blocks and forwarding those across the network. We have end users using things like Daedalus to send transactions. And we also have IOG relays. I haven't heard anybody talk about the IOG relays in a really long time. So I thought it was interesting that he got into this here, but this is important, and this explains why P2P is so important. We've heard people talk about peer-to-peer quite a bit, and I think a lot of people didn't understand exactly why this was so important. But he says what the IOG relays do is facilitate network routing between SPOs and also facilitate routing for end users to find a path to the SPOs. They also help new nodes come online in a trusted manner. So I did say trusted manner, not trustless manner. Obviously, they want to move to complete decentralization and trustlessness on the Cardano network. P2P will take us there. It'll help new nodes come online, discover other nodes, and ensure they get a good copy of the blockchain. P2P and Ouroboros Genesis will roll out to the testnet together in the coming weeks. So in the coming weeks, we'll get both P2P and Ouroboros Genesis. We're going to do all these awesome things, including, it sounds like, make great strides toward increasing throughput and also at the same time increase decentralization. That sounds like good work to me. Rolling out peer-to-peer will allow the network to organically self-regulate, and they'll be able to start turning off the IOG relays. They'll also roll out a gossip function that will free the end users from needing the IOG relays as well. Obviously, those are the kinds of architecture progress that probably won't see a lot of fanfare from the community, but I think those kind of strides toward decentralization are super important. So super happy to hear this is happening. Next up, Kevin Hammond told us that the changes that John described as to block size and transaction size will impact the number of Plutus scripts the blockchain can process. Makes sense, right? They're also looking at tuning other parameters and are currently focused on increasing the memory limit. I'm guessing he might mean the size of the mempool here when he says memory limit. If somebody else knows otherwise, please let me know. He says they've got lots of tricks up their sleeve to improve the experience of Plutus users. Script compression is one obvious one. This is a little sleight of hand to increase throughput before capacity actually increases. Makes sense, right? If you compress the Plutus scripts, you can obviously fit them in a smaller size. It's like less storage to store them. So you don't actually need to increase the capacity because now the scripts are taking up less space. So this is one short-term thing they can do to increase throughput. Another thing they're looking at is improving the efficiency of the Plutus interpreter. Those are just short-term things. Looking further ahead, they're also looking at using libraries to create sharing between scripts. That'll be a longer term thing requiring some research. He emphasized that they'll be making improvements all the time in the background, even if we're not seeing them. Back to John Woods, they started talking specifically about the network congestion we've recently seen during these gigantic NFT drops that have been happening. And John said, full blocks are a good thing, of course, as long as no one has to wait too long to actually get their transactions processed. He said in general, on the Cardano network right now, block utilization is 24 to 25%. So not very much. Basically 3/4 of the blocks on average are empty. He said Cardano has a smart transaction prioritization system where the node itself pulls transactions into the mempool instead of the transactions getting pushed to the mempool as in many blockchains. This means that even in those super heavy NFT drop periods, a user typically doesn't have to wait longer than about 15 minutes. He says, obviously, larger blocks will help a lot here. So yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that if they increase the block size, it's going to have a pretty tremendous impact on throughput here. Then they talked about an Ethereum style fee market. And this is something a lot of people who watch this channel have asked me about. And I've shared some of my thoughts on this privately. But I think IOHK, it looks like the engineers at IOHK are sort of thinking about this the same way I was. Of course, they are about a million times more polite about it, but I think their gut reaction is sort of the same as mine, just based on the sly smile Kevin Hammond has on his face here. So he very politely describes that they've been following the community conversation on this very closely. He pointed out that fee predictability is one of the big advantages of Cardano, and this is exactly how I feel. Fee determinism, to me, was one of the great selling points of the Cardano network, and specifically among Gen 3 blockchains with smart contracts and programmability. I think if you've been around for a while, you understand the fee market hell you experience in Ethereum. And I think it's easy to say, hey, there's blank amount of total value locked on Ethereum. I want us to be that way too. Let's just do what Ethereum does. Everybody knows it sucks, but let's just do it. That's the only way. That's the only way. We got to do it. I don't believe that's the best path. And I'm glad to hear that IOHK doesn't either. I think fee determinism is one of the great, great things about the Cardano network. I think sacrificing fee determinism would be like choice Z. That's plan Z for me. Sure. I mean, you could imagine, I mean, we haven't explored all the theoretical possibilities, all the different universes that might exist in the future for Cardano. And sure, maybe there's some of them where a fee market is a good idea. But to me, that's like plan Z. The very last plan is that we sacrifice fee determinism. Fee determinism is awesome. So Kevin Hammond says they don't see any need currently for a gas market. He mentioned that they're looking at traffic prioritization instead, which would be a fair way to ration throughput in times of congestion. And this might be the kind of thing where traffic prioritization includes maybe prioritizing things like payments. So this makes sense to me, and I think he very intentionally used the word fair. Because when I think about fee markets, people always say you have to have fee markets because that's the only way to make sure that the really high priority transactions get through. The problem with that logic in my mind is that those transactions might be high priority for the people who can afford to pay those fees. When you go on Ethereum, I mean, we see the evidence all the time on Twitter, on social media, people complaining that they can't move X token, whether it's an NFT or some kind of fungible token. They can't move it because the fees are too high. They're just stranded. People describe it as a great feature of Ethereum, not a bug, because nobody can actually leave Ethereum because they can't afford to move any of their stuff, right? They can't afford to move the value they have locked in the Ethereum network because it's too expensive to move it, right? It's like a great feature of Ethereum because nobody can actually leave Ethereum, right? Good work, Ethereum. Not really. But I think the word fair is important here because it creates maybe fairness. It creates a fast lane, a fee market, at least in practice in Ethereum in these times of very high congestion. We see these incredible gas fees that would be required to actually get your transaction included in a block. When we see that, sure, it's great and convenient for the people who can afford it. So we have this bizarre situation where everybody's suffering so that we can have convenience for the very rich. The very rich, it's very convenient for them to have the ability to pay these extraordinary gas fees that they can afford. But for everybody else, it just sucks. It just sucks for everybody except for the very rich who can afford it. To me, the current arguments for a fee market seem pretty unpersuasive. I would vote for pretty much any other approach to dealing with congestion that doesn't involve sacrificing fee determinism. And it turns out there are other ways to solve it. Kevin Hammond tells us they're also looking at a possible tiered structure so that you could pay more to get faster processing. This sounds better, right? I mean, it's like you want to be able to get faster processing instead of having a fee market where you can have like infinite, you can have like infinite fees as we've sadly found out in Ethereum. You could just have a tiered structure where there's sort of a base fee structure and then this like heightened fee structure where you can pay a little bit more to achieve a faster processing time. But it's not a fee market where there is no ceiling. and you can't have fee determinism, you can still have deterministic fees because the system will know, okay, they're opting into the second tier where they're paying more, or the first tier, and you can still actually calculate how much the fees are going to be. To me, these are vastly better than a fee market that would kill fee determinism. Again, that would be plan Z for me. This whole mid-month update was kind of like the fleshed out, finer grained version of something Charles said in one of his previous AMAs, not this most recent one, but the one before, I think. Somebody asked about throughput and TPS and congestion, like they always do. People are always asking him about that. And he said he's not worried about it at all. He's completely not worried about it. And it kind of makes sense to me when we hear the chief architect of Cardano, or at least the director of Cardano architecture, John Wood, say, hey, in general, we're at somewhere between 24 and 25% utilization of our blocks. And even during these heavy NFT drops, people generally don't have to wait longer than about 15 minutes. And I know you could go on Twitter and cite examples of people saying they waited, these extraordinary amounts of time for a transaction to process. I'm sure there are these outlier cases where that happens, but I actually believe him when he says that the average somebody waits is generally not longer than 15 minutes. I think that's probably right. And we still haven't seen Hydra, but even more important than that, we've got John Woods telling us that we're going to see an order of magnitude increase of throughput on L1. Just on the base layer, they think they can achieve an order of magnitude increase in throughput. If we're at 24% utilization right now, and that's not even thinking about Hydra yet. So I find this to be pretty persuasive that wasn't just bluster when Charles said he wasn't at all worried about throughput and TPS, any of those things in that AMA. I think we're actually in great shape, and it's going to be awesome to watch these things sort of unfold over this coming period. We're gonna have the PAB coming out in the next couple of weeks, and then we're gonna see all of this Cardano base layer improvement of throughput. I think it's gonna be a great period to be in Cardano. Hope you're starting out a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.